In recent months, the island of Taiwan has re-emerged as arguably the most important key to the geopolitical struggles of East Asia. China has publicly stated its desire to establish its control over the island, which has operated as a de facto independent country since the end of the Chinese Civil War. However, this has so far proven to be an insurmountable task, not just because of military logistics, but also because of economic considerations. In modern times, Taiwan has emerged as a technological superpower, becoming a critical linchpin in the production of semiconductors, which has made it one of the largest driving forces in the global electronics industry. This has led to Taiwan developing a so-called silicon shield, in which several key allies have invested heavily in its defense to prevent its crucial industries from falling into Chinese hands. How did this historically poor agricultural island turn into a technological powerhouse in a matter of decades, making it uber significant for both China and the United States? In this video, we're going to talk about Taiwan's economic wonder and how it has become one of the most important countries in the world as a result. This video is sponsored by our YouTube members and patrons, who get 2 exclusive videos weekly, not available anywhere else, for their kind support of our channel. You can join their ranks to watch more than 160 videos, including our series on the Pacific War, Punic Wars, Persian Wars, Spanish War of Succession, Russo-Japanese War, North African Campaign of World War II, History of Prussia, Italian Unification Wars, Risorgimento, Albigensian Crusades, and much more. Click the link in the description or pinned comment to get the exclusive videos, early access to all public videos, our schedule, wallpapers, access to a special Discord server where we're very active, and much more. Thanks for supporting us, we couldn't be doing it without your help. Since the mists of prehistory, Taiwan has been populated by Austronesian tribes, like the Atayal, Paiwan, and So, for millennia. These Austronesians were non-Chinese peoples who existed largely outside of the Chinese world. However, they likely came into contact with the Chinese as early as 230 AD. In the medieval era, these contacts increased, as Chinese merchants and fishermen began regularly visiting Taiwan. In the 17th century, Taiwan experienced a brief period of colonization by the European powers of Spain and the Netherlands, only to eventually fall under the rule of the Qing dynasty of China. After this, Taiwan gradually became Sinicized, especially along its eastern plains. Despite several rebellions by the native population, Imperial Chinese rule over the island continued until 1895, when the rising Japanese Empire took advantage of the Chinese decline and captured Taiwan. Japanese rule over Taiwan continued for 50 years, until the end of World War II, when the Chinese Civil War between the Communist Party of Mao Zedong and the Chiang Kai-shek government of Kuomintang restarted. This war resulted in a communist victory, forcing the Kuomintang to flee to Taiwan, together with some 2 million refugees, where they established the Provisional Republic of China government. In the 1940s, Taiwan was a predominantly agricultural economy, dependent on its sugar and rice exports. At the time of the Kuomintang takeover, Taiwan was considered a poor country with an economy largely shattered by the war. The influx of millions of refugees from the mainland was another factor straining the livelihoods of the island's pre-existing population. However, there were some factors bolstering Taiwan's economy during the early years of KMT rule. Before being chased off the mainland, the Kuomintang had taken China's gold reserves to Taiwan, which obviously helped secure some economic stability for the island during its period of transition. Moreover, Taiwan had a powerful ally in the United States, who recognized the Kuomintang government as the rightful government of China. Initially, American economic aid helped Taiwan to stay afloat. A third of this American aid went into Taiwanese agriculture, which enabled the Kuomintang government to carry out a series of land reforms in the early 1950s. These reforms essentially redistributed land from large landowners to small farmers, increased agricultural productivity, and improved the living standards of many ordinary Taiwanese, which was essential to the political and economic stability of the country. Moreover, the Korean War that broke out between 1950 and 1953 helped the Taiwanese economy, as Taiwan became crucial in the export of vital goods to the American army fighting in Korea. The fact that Taiwan had a well-developed railway system and basic industrial infrastructure developed during the era of Japanese colonial rule were important factors as well. However, despite these advantages, Taiwan was miles away from achieving the almost unprecedented rapid economic and technological advances for which it is known today. So without further ado, let's get into that. From the 1950s onwards, when Taiwan was recovering from post-World War II turmoil, the world, particularly its capitalist half, was going through an era of globalization. Global trade, including in the sphere of electronics, was on the rise. By the 1970s, American companies were in the midst of competition with the skyrocketing Japanese tech industry, and American industry giants were looking for ways to lower their costs. One of the steps they took to this end was investing in East Asian countries with a well-trained and well-educated workforce who could be paid far cheaper wages than their American counterparts earned. Taiwan was one of the countries that was happy to see such foreign investment. In the beginning, American investments mostly went towards Singapore and Malaysia, but 3 plants were also set up in Taiwan, which was initially planned as the final assembly point of consumer electronics. However, the Taiwanese government was keen to take advantage of this opportunity. In 1973, they launched the Industrial Technology Research Institute, or ITRI, as an organization to facilitate local research and development in close cooperation with foreign investors. ITRI had a particular focus on the development of commercial products. There is a story about a Chinese expatriate working at the Radio Corporation of America who advised the Taiwanese Minister of Economy, Sun Yun-swan, to pursue semiconductor development. This idea was approved by the Taiwanese government, which managed to persuade the Radio Corporation of America to transfer semiconductor technology to Taiwan by 1976. We can identify this moment as the point when Taiwan decided to focus on the semiconductor industry as the country's strategic sector. From that point forward, the Taiwanese government invested heavily in the domestic production of semiconductors and opened another research and development facility called the Hsinchu Science Park in 1980. One of the companies established by ITRI in Hsinchu was the United Microelectronic Company, or UMC, the first dedicated semiconductor manufacturing company in Taiwan. While Taiwan was building up its semiconductor industry at home, young Taiwanese engineers were being encouraged to go west and work in Silicon Valley so they could bring their knowledge back to Taiwan. In his interview with the BBC, Dr. Si Chin-tae, an engineer who went to Taiwan after working as a chip designer in America, talked about one of the first experimental factories opened in Taiwan based on the technology transferred from American electronics companies. To everyone's surprise, this factory overperformed the production rate of the Radio Corporation of America, which proved just how lucrative the chip industry could and would become for Taiwan. Another important development for the Taiwanese chip industry occurred when the ITRI recruited Morris Chang, a Chinese-American engineer and vice president of Texas Instruments, with a history in chip production. Later, Chang became the head of the ITRI. Taiwan was not the only East Asian country building up its tech industry in the 1980s, and nations like South Korea and Singapore were striving to boost their electronics manufacturing as well. However, the crucial difference was that, unlike Korean and Singaporean companies, the Taiwanese UMC's business model focused almost exclusively on the niche of semiconductor chips. Chang quickly realized that competing with American and Japanese electronics giants in manufacturing final consumer products was going to be extremely difficult. So instead, the Taiwanese decided to focus on producing semiconductors and supplying them to major electronic companies, most of whom welcomed this development. For American and Japanese electronics producers, buying semiconductors from Taiwan meant lower prices and higher margins. It must be stressed that semiconductors are crucial items used in various electronic devices, ranging from computers to smartphones to game consoles to medical devices such as MRIs. Taiwan's bet on such a key component of the global electronics industry was a smart and strategic move that paved the way for the rapid economic development of the country. Taiwan's semiconductor industry operated on something called the foundry model. As they could not compete with global tech giants, they would instead turn those tech giants into their customers. As Dr. Shi said, rule number 1 at TSMC is don't compete with your customers. The TSMC, or Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Corporation, was founded by Chang in 1987 after securing an agreement with Philips, in which TSMC acquired Philips's production technology and license of intellectual property in exchange for Philips acquiring a stake in TSMC. After this agreement, the stage was set for the rapid development of Taiwan's technology sector. In 1980, Taiwan's IT output was less than $100 million, but by 1989 it exceeded $5 billion. Scholars identify several important causes behind the success of Taiwan's semiconductor industry. The first pillar is the Taiwanese government's policy of encouraging competition between different local producers. In comparison with other East Asian electronic industries, the Taiwanese were more decentralized, allowing for the competition of smaller manufacturers, all backed by the research and development support of the ITRI. According to the 2015 statistics from Taiwan, over 97% of all companies in Taiwan are small and medium enterprises, which employ 78% of the nation's workforce. Another way in which the ITRI helps grow Taiwan's tech industry is by bringing different Taiwanese organizations into cooperation. Such cooperation groups usually consist of one or more local research institutes, many small and medium enterprises, and one large corporation. This mechanism has helped facilitate the rise of smaller entities, boosted competition among them, and allowed them to have access to know-how provided by research entities. Another key to the triumph of Taiwan's electronics industry is its close ties with global players. Many Taiwanese engineers have worked in Silicon Valley companies, learning and absorbing their know-how before going back home and applying their knowledge in Taiwan. These returning engineers had good connections in American companies and actively helped create partnerships between Taiwanese chip producers and American electronics giants, alongside other major global corporations like Philips. Since Taiwanese companies were producing chips for these global corporations, they often had access to the newest technology of these corporations. As a result, Taiwanese chip producers gradually turned themselves into an indispensable component of the global supply chain. Ultimately, the decentralization, investment in research and development, and transfer of global know-how into Taiwan paved the way for independent innovation. The role of the Industrial Technology Research Institute and other research and education facilities in Taiwan has been particularly crucial in transitioning from imitation to innovation, which has led to deepening high-tech specialization. No longer a mere supplier in the global electronics market, Taiwan has emerged as a center of technological revolution. Tax incentives and expansion of the state support for research and development work have incentivized all of this. This focus on innovation has enabled Taiwanese manufacturers to make chips more efficient. TSMC is now capable of etching 100 billion circuits onto a signal microprocessor, that is 100 million circuits per square millimeter. In 2022, Taiwan produced 60% of the world's semiconductor chips, earning more than $40 billion out of the $57.4 billion profit made worldwide. Overall, this contributes to 15% of Taiwan's GDP. Today, the semiconductor industry in Taiwan is one of the seminal success stories of the modern global economy. However, the triumph of Taiwan's semiconductor business has also, in a way, become its curse. Let us now look at how Taiwan's semiconductor industry affects the country's geopolitical position. As of 2024, Taiwan is recognized as a sovereign state by 12 countries, none of which are major global players. The reason for this is obvious: China. In the immediate decades after the conclusion of the civil war between the CCP and KMT, the United States recognized the Taiwan government as the legal government of China. But geopolitical realities soon pushed the United Nations, the United States, and other countries to officially recognize the People's Republic of China as, well, China. Despite Taiwan's lack of international recognition and a seat at the UN, many countries maintain unofficial relations with Taiwan. This has not stopped Beijing from insisting on the One China policy, which views Taiwan as an inalienable part of China and demands the severing of official diplomatic relations with Taipei. The Chinese leader, Xi Jinping, made his stance on the matter clear when he stated that no outside influence could stop the so-called reunification of Taiwan with the People's Republic of China. Throughout the Cold War era, Beijing's relations with Taipei were chilly, with tensions between the two sides escalating into military conflict during the First Taiwan Strait Crisis in 1954–55 and the second in 1958. However, the American military backing of Taiwan ultimately proved to be a sufficient deterrent for China. Throughout the 1980s, relations between Beijing and Taipei thawed. Under the leadership of Deng Xiaoping, China declared peaceful unification as its new policy towards Taiwan, promising a great deal of autonomy to the island should it enter into the Chinese fold. In 1987, the Taiwanese government lifted a ban on travel to China, and a year later, Beijing adopted a policy encouraging investment from Taiwan to the Chinese coastal areas, promising Taiwanese businesses no tariffs and security from nationalization. In 2009, Taipei allowed Chinese investors to enter the Taiwanese market. By the early 21st century, semi-official communication between government representatives in Taiwan and China had become fairly normalized. While neither side took a step back from their principled positions, economic cooperation between China and Taiwan flourished. Between 1991 and 2022, Taiwanese companies invested over $200 billion in China, moving a significant portion of its manufacturing cycle to China for cost-saving purposes. According to Taiwan's Ministry of Economic Affairs, over 80% of Taiwan's information and communication technology products are produced in China. Today, these two economies are very strongly linked, as China is Taiwan's largest trading partner, taking up over 20% of Taiwan's total trade. Taiwan, on the other hand, is China's fifth largest trading partner. While these economic relations have been mutually beneficial, they have also posed challenges for Taiwan. Since 2017, China has been actively working on advancing its own semiconductor industry, and it has been recruiting engineers from Taiwan to that end. According to one estimate, out of roughly 40,000 Taiwanese semiconductor engineers, China has attracted almost 3,000. This has been a very concerning development for Taiwan, and the Taiwanese government has responded with measures aimed at decreasing its economic dependence on China. The Taiwanese government adopted the New Southbound policy in 2016, seeking to detangle its tech industry from China by investing in other Asian countries and increasing trade with them. However, China has a major dependence on Taiwan as well, more specifically on its chip industry. In 2020, China spent more on importing chips than it did on oil. The growing Chinese electronics industry relies on chips from Taiwan, since its semiconductor industry is still significantly behind the Taiwanese. Consequently, along with other important factors, Taiwan's semiconductor industry is simply too important for global electronics manufacturing, and any disruption would create massive supply problems, including in China. According to the Semiconductor Industry Association, any disruption to production in Taiwan would cause almost $500 billion in losses for electronics manufacturers. The Rhodium Group claims that a conflict in Taiwan would put more than $2 trillion of economic activity under threat. This is known as the Silicon Shield, an invisible buffer protecting Taiwan, particularly from China. Taiwan is, as they say, just too big to fail. Too big for the global economy and for businesses manufacturing crucial things, ranging from cars to military equipment. However, China is working on decreasing its dependence on Taiwan in order to destroy Taiwan's Silicon Shield. The Economist Intelligence Unit claims that since 2014, Beijing has invested more than $150 billion in its semiconductor industry, and just recently, in May 2024, they invested a further $47.5 billion. However, global data analyst Michael Orme claims that China is still at least a decade away from reaching Taiwan's level of sophistication in semiconductor manufacturing. At this point, if China decides to attack Taiwan, it will backfire massively on China's tech and electronics industry. Orme argues that the Taiwanese may be willing to destroy their semiconductor enterprises to prevent China from taking them over, or to just refuse to work for the Chinese. A threat from China has also pushed the United States to heavily invest in domestic semiconductor production. In 2022, Congress approved the Chips and Science Act with a budget of roughly $280 billion. The Americans are wary of the Chinese threat to Taiwan, and these are contingency measures to reduce dependence on Taiwanese production. Even though TSMC will be among the corporations producing chips in the United States, American investment in domestic production is another challenge for Taiwan. In the past couple of years, particularly after the war in Ukraine, the tensions around Taiwan have only grown. There is a global crisis brewing, which has only increased China's resolve to take Taiwan. Chinese leaders have repeatedly stated their intention to reunify with Taiwan, and they have conducted several military drills around the island. The Americans continue supporting Taiwan, with the high-level visit of the then Congress Speaker Pelosi to Taiwan drawing Beijing's ire. However, just how ready America is to protect Taiwan from the cross-strait threat remains unclear. Taiwan has come a long way since becoming de facto independent. It has transformed its agrarian economy into a high-tech industrial powerhouse, which is crucial for the global supply chain. All of this happened in a matter of a couple of decades. Apart from continuing to excel in the semiconductor industry, despite all the challenges, Taiwan is also making strides in the new game in town, artificial intelligence. In 2018, the Taiwanese government launched the AI Taiwan Action Plan, with the aim of developing talent, liberalizing laws to enhance AI development, and boosting productivity by introducing AI to manufacturing. As a result, Taiwanese companies have already developed several noteworthy AI products in healthcare, manufacturing, hospitality, and other spheres. But now Taiwan faces perhaps its biggest threat yet. The deepening cross-strait crisis and questions about the willingness of its allies to defend it are among the huge challenges the island is facing right now. Only time will tell if the island nation's silicon shield will continue to protect it from its behemoth of a neighbor. Yet, as long as the Taiwanese people hold to the spirit of creativity and innovation which allowed them to surge from a backwater island to a global economic powerhouse, they may yet enjoy a bright future. This video is sponsored by the Taipei Economic and Cultural Office in Canada. More videos on modern history and contemporary politics are on the way. To make sure you don't miss them, make sure you are subscribed and have pressed the bell button. Please consider liking, subscribing, commenting and sharing, it helps immensely. Recently, we've started releasing weekly Patreon and YouTube member-exclusive content. Consider joining their ranks via the link in the description or button under the video to watch these weekly videos, learn about our schedule, get early access to our videos, access our private Discord, and much more. This is the Kings and Generals channel, and we will catch you on the next one.